every generation has upon it the responsibility of laying a foundation which will provide for a foundation for the success or the failure of the next generation, or what I would prefer to say, a rising generation. Barry, we need to look at this Torah portion. Good morning, by the way.
Good morning.
We look at this Torah portion, and I know that you've taught on it extensively, so have I this week, but I think it's something that we really need to devote more time to. This is a Torah portion that brings forth a foundation for, we could say, the failures of generations to come. We see that it is said that the spies came back, and it was the ninth of Av. This would set in motion something that generation after generation would have to deal with. This specific date, many things have happened on the ninth of Av, and so, is it possible that what we're doing in our generation, our successes, our failures, are things that generations to come will have to deal with also?
No, we don't think, Mike, about the second generation having to live down the legacy of their mothers and fathers, even their grandparents. I've encountered people who did not have a good home environment, and would talk about they had to live down the fact that one of their parents or both were alcoholics or failed to work or whatever. The things associated with a shameful situation, and they had to live it down, is a phrase that we use. This second generation in the wilderness, we've talked about it before, when it gets down to it's just Moshe that's left from the previous one, and they can't go in until he dies. We kind of facetiously have said, they were waiting, okay, Moshe, when you going to go?
Yeah.
When you go, we get to go in. So what you waiting on, man? So
we're taking those nutrients, Moshe, skip the stuff, go ahead and just, Moshe, would you like another soda? How about, I'm going to go over to McDonald's and get you a quarter pounder with cheese, and we're just going to load you up today, because when you
double quarter pounder.
Yeah, double quarter. Consider, I've thought of this. After the judgment is placed upon these people, no one over age 20 is going to enter into the promised land. Everybody knows it. Everybody in the camp knows it. Maybe they never quite considered that, wait a minute, Moshe is over 20. I think that was maybe a surprise along the way, or a revelation along the way of, wait a minute, everybody's dead. Aaron, Miriam, mom, dad. Wait a minute. He's going to die too. That was a revelation. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, he attributed that to himself when he messed up in striking the rod instead of speaking the rod. It became a very adamant declaration at that point. I find it intriguing, Mike, and I didn't include it in this week's 10-minute Torahs, but it really hit me that at the end of chapter 14, when all of the fallout of the evil report that had been brought back has been stated and decreed, chapter 15 picks right back up. When you come into the land, this is the way you're to present your offerings. Jan did not stop preparing the next generation because the first generation failed. He immediately begins to start training those who will go in.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there are times that we, in one generation, because we choose not to believe or to walk in and trust or prepare ourselves for the kingdom, we also prevent a subsequent generation or two from doing the same. I think about my own home. Laura and I raised our daughters to walk as we walk. And we tried to model a walk that they would want to follow. Now, they will tell us, in some things, Mom, Dad, that's just not the way it is anymore, especially in the arena of technology. I had someone some number of years ago say, "You still carrying a flip phone? Dude, we got to get you into a smartphone." And I thought,
have you ordered that yet?
Excuse me?
Have you ordered that smartphone yet?
Yeah. I'm on a few verses down the road. But I used to say, I don't need a phone for a camera. All I need to be able to do is make a phone call. Well, now that we made the switch over years ago, you realize there's so much more versatility and ability in your hand. You don't have to wear a camera around your neck anymore. Anyway, that aside, technology is one thing. But when your children look at us and say, "You all always taught us thus and such," mm-hmm. and you see them modeling that behavior. When I hear our daughters sing the Shema with our grandkids as they're laying in bed and get ready to go to sleep, that says something to me. Mm-hmm. When the grandkids are staying here, and we read the 15th book to them, and books that they can quote by heart, they're ready to go to sleep. If they're still wiggling around and laughing and giggling, all I have to do is say, "Okay, we're going to sing Shema," and they'll sing it with me, and immediately their spirits calm down.
Wow.
Their demeanor relaxes, and sometimes, I've seen them just about fall asleep before they can finish. There's that sense of calm, Mike, to see my grandchildren be able to sing the Aaronic blessing with me. Now, do my subsequent generations do it exactly as I would? No, they're going to put their own spin on it. They're going to do it their own way. They're going to make their own applications. But to hear my daughter say to me, "I was praying about," mm-hmm. or "Will you help me pray about a situation?" It's not just that they say, "Oh, there's a problem. I need you to pray." Mm-hmm. It's, "Will you pray with us about?" So I know that things have been trained and passed on. That's comforting. But Mike, we got to push them up higher than we are. It's not enough that our subsequent generations meet the level that we ourselves are walking on. We need to find a way that they go further and higher, and that they are more involved in spreading abroad this word than we are.
So what you explained is the reason that I've changed something. I'm doing quite a bit of ministry youth right now. We'll actually be announcing something at the end of the program. But I've done this over the last few years, and looking at youth and saying, please do not allow someone to call you the next generation, but rather a rising generation. What you explained with your daughters, the grandchildren, with what Yah did with Moshe, when the judgment had been placed upon the people after they listened to the 10 with the bad report, he didn't just kind of sit back and go, well, what do I do now? He didn't say, okay, well, these people have to die before I can do something, before I can get myself back on track. These people got to die out. No, he just went ahead and looked at this generation that in his mind was already rising up. So this is not a one generation, another generation. we have the baby boomers, which were between this year, and then the Gen X and Gen Z and Gen whatever, this year to this year to this. No, he looks at the whole thing of as one generation may be failing, another one he's preparing to rise up and succeed. And so he was preparing this generation to enter into the promised land as this generation was deciding not to. His plans were not, there was no no pause in his plans. And that's the amazing thing we look at, Barry, when we see and I love this concept that I've taught for years of when I tell people to turn to the beginning of Scripture, and 10 out of 9 will turn to Bereshit, Genesis chapter 1, and then I start reading over in Revelation chapter 21, 22 of a new heaven, a new earth, of people that will call him theirs, and he will call them his, and that's where I start, because that was where it all began. And then he backed up, started, and he's never taken his vision. He's never taken his gaze. He's never taken his focus off the end. No matter what, men, women, children, demonic principalities, angelic beings, no matter what happened in anything, the Father has had a single focus, and that is to get to Revelation chapter 21 and chapter 22. How would our life be different today if we could enter into that focus?
You mean decreeing the end from the beginning? Having destiny in mind. Having destiny in mind and a goal and actually going for it. We've talked about that.
But understand. Sorry, let me just kind of throw something in here. I'll turn it back over to you. But understanding that it's not just the destiny. Okay, when I talk about the focus of the destiny, you have to go through and be influential in today in order to reach the destiny of tomorrow. And this is where many people kind of lose this of, oh, I just want to pray your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as is in heavens, but I'm not going to engage in anything today that may affect that. Let's just sit back and watch it happen. And I mean, most of the people that we have that are listening, you're not of that mindset. But we deal with people that are of that mindset.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, it's much easier to kick everything into neutral and coast.
Mm.
And just hold the steering wheel and keep it out of the ditch. There's more to it than that. I mean, you got to be engaged. You got to be in gear, so to speak. Part of that is in Devarim 6, verse 6 and 7. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, you the listener, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. So you need to listen to what I'm saying, he says to them, but then you need to be actively engaged and passing them on and impressing them and demonstrating them and discussing them and commenting on them with your children as you go. It's not enough for you and I to speak bold words on recordings and on Shabbat. We have to live it out day by day with integrity, with intensity, so that our kids understand this is not a religious aspect to the rest of our lives. This is our life.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference. We're talking about the two generations in a house, or a rising generation. There's a difference in focus, and everybody goes through this. My 30, 40 years ago, we were in our kids' shoes, and we were young and idealistic. We had a very, I don't know a better word than idealistic understanding of what things ought to be. Pipe dreams, pie in the sky mentality. We saw what we thought were failures in our previous generations and said to ourselves, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something different. And so when we were approached, why don't you do it this way, or what, do such and such? Well, we have decided that we're not going to do that. We're going to do it this way. We're not going to spank our children or give them whoopings. We're going to use the timeout chair or the naughty corner or whatever, the phase, and how things changed in discipline in the homes. The older generation, where you and I are now, you can call us seasoned, you can call us experienced, you can call us mature. The younger generation will probably look at us and say, lost your edge, you run out of steam, you're focused on traditions, and you're stuck. We look at them and say, you're immature, you're idealistic, and you're not fully grounded yet. Both sides are right. If you and I want to be really honest with ourselves, there are times that we're stuck in our routines and we're stuck in the mud, and we're not really going as fast. We've lost some of our idealism. We need fresh vision. We need innovation. We need new ideas. And just because someone is younger doesn't mean that the idea that they offer is automatically to be set aside because, well, they just don't know any better yet.
Mm-hmm.
The younger generation looking at us needs to follow, I think, the Torah requirement. When a great head walks in the room, you should show honor. Mm-hmm. The native culture in America highly prizes the elders, those that have lived and experienced and have wisdom. And when they speak, you don't interrupt them. Just let them speak. If you have a question, you can approach them later, but let the elders speak. Even if you disagree with them, let them speak. You and I are kind of, I still consider myself a young man. I'm not old yet. I don't know. Mike's pushing it a little bit, but he's not there yet. We're not ready to fall in the grave yet. I still want to learn. And there's been some ideas that have come up. It's like, that kind of goes against my grain, but I need to pray about that and consider that, because that might be a more effective way of doing something. In other words, the generations have got to communicate in a way that they can hear what's being said. We don't speak the same language. The different generations speak differently, think differently. They are different. But this is consistent. Mm-hmm. We've got to find the way to communicate this in such a way that it is consistent between the generations and says the same thing. That's not an easy task.
Yeah. But it is something that we're called to. And this is why I'm so excited these days about the youth ministry that I'm doing. And I'll tell the youth, I need your energy and you need my wisdom. I don't back up by saying that. I mean, when I say, listen, you may not like what I'm about to say, but you need me. And if you don't think you do, you need to get over yourself. You need me, and the truth is I need you. What is difficult is that we're raising a generation that is visionless. Now, that's another subject we'd have to spend hours and hours on. So when you look to a younger generation, for an energy source to propel you on, but you can't find any there, that is where you got to move on your own. Okay, you talked about, when you're younger, you're more focused, you're more into, you dream more, you have vision. I want to, I want to go to my grave having a vision of doing something in life. I never want to be the person that says, well, it's time to retire and spend my mornings at Cracker Barrel. That's the typical routine. I mean, we all have our routines. That's fine. But are you influential in your routine? Okay, is your routine of life, and it doesn't matter if you're, the first thing we start out with life is routine. It's called, sleep, eat, and the other thing. Okay, that's the routine. That routine doesn't really change through our life.
Right.
It morphs into something different. But in the end, you're still doing the same basic three things that you did when you started this life. Now, the question is, are you going to, in the midst of sleep, eat, and do the other thing, are you going to then learn how to become influential within your routine? Or are you just going to live life being influenced in the midst of your routine? And this is what put thousands upon thousands of bones in the wilderness, is a people that did not learn to be influential, but they accepted being influenced. Only 2 would be influential. Look at the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
2 would be influential in life. Thousands of others would just be influenced. To live your life just being influenced by what others say is to die in the wilderness. To live your life in such a way that you are influencing others is to enter into his dream. That's my choice. That's everyone's choice. No matter what you see of yourself, you heard me talk about this, that the greatest friend, the greatest enemy that we have on this planet really is not some, the devil made me do it. I saw some post yesterday, pray for me, I'm under attack. Really, probably the thing you need to do is go look in your own mirror and figure out where the attack's really coming from. When we see ourselves in the mirror through our eyes, if I look in the mirror and I see myself as through my eyes, it ain't pretty. If I see myself through his eyes, then I gain the strength to move forward and nothing can stop me.
Mike, let's look at the generation of Yeshua. Those who followed Yeshua, he called young men. Some of the old movies show them almost decrepit when they started following. But he called young men to follow him.
Yeah, probably in their teens.
Yeshua himself was in his early 30s. So he would have been, in all honesty, a very young man, a very energetic, strong young man. And he called these young men to walk with him. We know that Yochanan lived until his 80s. But after Yeshua had ascended, they had decades that they gave to spreading the message of Yeshua, and they didn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't always agree. Kepha and Rav Shaul are known to have butted heads on more than one occasion. You and I are in a generation that we need to punch each other every now and again. If I see Mike Clayton getting lethargic or depressed or discouraged over lack of results or whatever, I need to call Mike. And we've done this for each other. We have provoked and questioned and prodded and encouraged each other over the years. You know, Mike, are you losing focus? Or are you being distracted here or whatever? Barry, you know, stop making excuses. That doesn't work anymore. Here's a good swift kick for you. And you've asked me questions that hurt, but I needed to hear them. To allow someone to fizzle and flop in our own generation is just wrong. Look, we fought too many devils and won. We have come through too many trials and overcame. We have prayed too many prayers that have been answered. We've taught too much truth that has made a difference in people's lives to let our light just blow out and lay down and say, well, I've done my part. I'm finished. And I'm just going to kind of sit here and hang on as long as I can until I die. That's just wrong. My mom is in her mid-80s. And she was dealt a severe blow when my dad died a couple of years ago. And at times it still rocks her down. But she will look at you and say, I'm not old, and I don't want to be old, and I'm not going to be old. And she, you know, I talked to her yesterday, what you been doing, Mom? Oh, I've been out working in my garden. And I've got this, I need to bake this, and I need to go there, and I need to do. I want her to be actively engaged in life. She's too young to quit. I have other relatives, well, you know, they're younger than her, and they're just kind of hanging around and don't go anywhere, don't do anything much anymore. And I'm thinking, why? Well, Barry, you just don't understand how bad people feel. I understand that. I get that. But if your brain is working, if you have the ability to communicate, there's still time to sow your stories into your grandkids. There's a book on the nightstand beside Laura's side of the bed. Grandma, tell me your story. Mike, I know legendary style people who have passed on. No one's thought or had the opportunity to sit down with a video camera and capture their stories. And their history is now gone. There are legends. Batya Wooten, for example, others in that category. Somebody needs to sit down with a camera and video capture the legend of their stories and get information down. I'm not looking for her to pass or anything, but before they're gone, we need to capture that so it's not lost. Another way of instilling that, though, is by personally mentoring young men and young women. Before my dad passed, he was looking for something to do, and I encouraged him, Dad, get the young men in your church to meet you, and you pray with them. If those young men could have heard my dad pray and learned to model their prayer life after his, my dad would still be living on in their prayer chambers. To my knowledge, he didn't do that. So, we got work to do. There are things, you don't have to stand in front of a congregation with an hour-long teaching. Living with and mentoring and grooming and encouraging someone younger than yourself is vital. That has to be done.
What you're talking about, I mean, this is what I started with this morning, is a foundation that is passed on from generation to generation. When when the multitude looked at the 10 spies, they didn't ask themselves the question, how will my decision affect my children? How will my decision affect my grandchildren? Is my decision going to allow me to lead them in or hinder them from going in? You know, here's where I taught on this week. We all have people that we follow. Just make sure that the person you're following is going in the right direction. You know, the multitude followed 10 men to their death in the wilderness. The opportunity was there for people in that multitude and say, hey, I'm separating myself from the pack here. You know, I'm not going with those people. I'm going with Joshua and Caleb. Could it have been different? Could the judgment have been different, Barry, if there was a group of, there should have been a line in the sand. Somebody should have walked up to the front and said, okay, you 10 over there, you 2 over there, line in the sand, everybody else figure out which side of the line you're going to be on. Would the judgment have been different? I believe it would, but nobody took that stand. See, I try my best to help.
Mike, you're digitized.
And
try that again.
You know that you know enough. I can make a person succeed that doesn't want to succeed.
Mike, you were digitizing there for about the last 20 seconds. Try that again.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, it is now.
It's just it's the emotion I've got. There comes a point. I mean, you know that I thrive on seeing people's lives change spiritually,
yeah,
emotionally, physically, financially. I thrive on that. That's just my makeup of helping people to become the person they were created to be. But I also have to realize there comes a time in which a person says, no, I'm not going to succeed no matter what you do. And I have to walk away because I refuse to be held back in life by a person that doesn't want to move forward.
Mm.
I may not be able to get you where you need to go, but you will not keep me from where I'm going.
I remember as a kid, throwing the defiant demonstration. Sit down, fold your arms, I ain't going. Well, just sit there then. We'll see when we get back.
Mm-hmm.
Then you realize, wait a minute, I don't get to go at all. You change your attitude or you get left behind.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Left behind. Yeah. Well, Barry, we need to close this up. I've got a couple things to advertise. I'm doing this on my program course. At the end of actually next weekend, I'll be at House of Scripture speaking on what is that? Whatever next weekend is, I have no idea. I've got to get to the calendar. June 12th, I'll be at House of Scripture in Canton. They moved Canton, Georgia. Be followed up by a time with Camp Mashiach up in Whittier, North Carolina, speaking to youth there. And then you and I and a couple of other very special people that I know are going to be meeting in Franklin, Tennessee, not Franklin, North Carolina, Franklin, Tennessee for Revive Conference.
Yeah.
And so Barry's going to be one of the workshop speakers there. And, if you're going to be at Revive, just go ahead and let me tell you, that's where you need to be. you and I, as well as my son, Kathy, not my son, Daniel, his wonderful wife, Catesby, they're going to be there. And the four of us will be working with the youth. We have 4 hours with the youth together with them, excited about that. Appreciate anybody for your prayers. This is a time that I take very serious. I love hanging out with youth because adults are boring.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. I'm scheduled currently to do a breakout session Thursday afternoon. This is the first day of the conference between 3 and 4 o'clock. And unless Yah intervenes and says do differently, I'm going to be addressing increasing your covenant capacity. A subtitle is Believing as Big as He Does.
All right.
So ask you to pray and help, encourage right thinking and focus to come as I put this together. And if you're attending, I'd love for you to come and be a part of that workshop. It would be very helpful. I'd love to meet you. If you watch Foundations for Life, 10-Minute Torah, Mike's Torah commentaries, if you see us online, we'd love to meet you in person.
Yep. And
just find out who you are and how things are going and meet you personally. That would be very much an encouragement. So, and let me ask this as well. If you've enjoyed today's Foundations for Life, put it on your social media, pass it along, and encourage others to take a look as well. It's very much appreciated. So, Mike, until next Wednesday. Well, I guess as far as I know, we'll be around.
Bezrat Hashem.
Bezrat.
As my grandmother said, good Lord willing, the creek don't rise.
And
the
the
only
creek
thing that have a difference in that is if the good Lord's willing, it doesn't matter if the creek rises.
That's right. That's right. So we'll see you again next week. Until then, shalom.
You, Barry.